You basically have two options when you're charged with a crime. You can either plead guilty or you can go to trial. So if you plead guilty, you pretty much know what the outcome is going to be of your case. The downside of that is that you will have a criminal conviction on your record. On the other hand, if you go to trial, you could be acquitted and all the charges will be dismissed, but you could also be convicted. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of going to trial. My name is Diane C. I am a criminal defense attorney in Orange County, California. So one of the main questions my clients ask me is, should I take a plea or should I go to trial and defend myself? That all depends. So first we're going to talk about the pros and cons of going to trial. First, let's talk about the pros. If you are innocent, obviously you want to go to trial. You want to prove your innocence. I say that reluctantly because you are supposedly presumed innocent unless proven guilty, but that is not the reality. When you walk into a courtroom, everyone in the room is going to think you probably did something, otherwise you wouldn't be there. It's just the sad reality of the situation. However, you do get your day in court. You do get an opportunity to present evidence, to bring in witnesses, to bring in any kind of evidence in your favor and testify in your own behalf if you choose to do so. But you also have the right to remain silent, and that can't or shouldn't, realistically shouldn't, be used against you. But here is what you want to be aware of if you do decide to go to trial. First of all, we are going to have all of the evidence that the government or the people have against you. If they have a rock solid case, maybe not such a great idea to go to trial, because then you end up with a conviction and you end up going into custody probably immediately upon receiving the verdict in some cases. You also don't know who your jurors are, and that for me is the biggest fear about going to trial. You have 12 strangers from the community. You have very little time to get to know anything about them, and you basically have to just go with your gut feeling. So it is very risky. I tell my clients it doesn't matter how great of a lawyer I am if you have a really bad jury. It's just the reality of the situation. The bottom line is trial is risky. Because you face a potential conviction, you also have no control at this point over what the sentence will be because you gave up an opportunity to settle it early on for potentially less than what you might be looking at after trial. So it is a risk, even if you're innocent, but obviously if you're innocent, you should not plead guilty. So now I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of pleading guilty or taking a deal or taking a plea. There are many different things to call it. So for these reasons, many people decide that they're going to take a deal because they don't want to take a chance of being convicted and they don't want to have this fear of being sentenced to God knows what after trial if they don't take a deal. And a lot of people who are guilty do plead guilty for many different reasons. Sometimes it's just to get out of custody if they're in jail, but other times they just want to get it over with, or they're promised something significantly less than what they would be facing if they went to trial and lost. So here's what it comes down to when I'm working with a client and they're trying to decide whether or not to take a deal. These are the things that we talk about. And by the way, it is always the client's decision whether to go to trial or take a deal. I can only advise you, give you my best advice about what I think you should do. But at the end of the day, it is only the client who can make that decision. So one of the things that you want to consider is whether it's a reasonable offer, whether it's something that you can live with, whether ultimately at some point in the future you might be able to get the charges dismissed if it's a state case. Unfortunately, in federal case, once you have a conviction, you're stuck with it. The other question is, what would the sentence be if I go to trial and lose? So if you're looking at life, but you're offered 8 years, 8 years is going to be really hard to swallow, but it's certainly better than a life sentence. So there is not a one-size-fits-all answer to this question. Every case has to be decided individually. It depends upon the evidence that the prosecutors have, whether you have a good prosecutor, whether you have a good judge. There are so many factors that go into this, but you also essentially want to look at what happens if I lose, and is this reasonable, and is this something that I can live with? So if you or someone you love is facing criminal charges and they're trying to make this decision, check out my website, check out my other videos, call my office, schedule an appointment. I would be happy to help you.